All right, I don't know if you saw this earlier this week, but after the college football playoff committee released their rankings, of course, ESPN, which broadcasts that spectacle, had a spectacle of their own on Wednesday, and that was Paul Finebaum and Stephen A. Smith going back and forth, doing what they do so well. Here's what Paul Finebaum said in reaction to the rankings. He said Georgia should be number one, and it has nothing to do with what they've done in the past. It's really about what they are right now, and I still think they're the best team in the country. Stephen A. goes on to say, I respectfully disagree. I try to defer to the great Paul Finebaum. No one uses more adjectives than Stephen A. I'll tell you that right now. I try to defer to the great Paul Finebaum. I truly do. But the bottom line is that I'm looking at Ohio State, and yes, they've beaten Penn State. You've beaten Notre Dame, who are 11 and 15 respectively. I'm just looking at it right now. Those are two victories over top teams, and that's not wrong. First of all, if you've not enjoyed what Ryan and I had to say about this already, I'll recap it real quick. We really do not have a huge issue with Ohio State being number one. I think that the committee every single year does what they do, and you can't. There's really just not a lot that you can do about it. I'm not sure that there's a structure by the way that the committee does it, but Paul knows college football better than Stephen A. does. That's for sure. And I think that and yeah, I mean, Paul's an SEC homer. There's no question about that. But at the same time, he's not an idiot. And he, the grand scheme of things here, what do you look like when you play all the time? And one thing Ryan and I were talking a lot about, Ohio State has not looked unbelievable this entire season. And let me just go through it real quick with you here, because as good as Ohio State's been in the past, I wouldn't say that they have played, sort of up to that this year. A lot of people haven't, Michigan included. They were really pretty sloppy against Maryland. The way they looked against Indiana was not great. They didn't play great against Wisconsin. To be honest, I thought they played pretty well against Penn State. It was just an ugly game. And then, they won by the narrowest of margins against Notre Dame, which you totally get credit for. And, it's just what it is. But, I think if you're looking for Ohio State to be like they were a season ago, that's not who they are. And that's okay. To me, that's okay. But you'll have a good chance to check it out, this weekend if you're watching this game from home, Georgia, Missouri from home, because this is a great weekend on CBS. They're going to dominate the television. They go Ohio State, Rutgers, Georgia, Missouri, Alabama, LSU. Boom, boom, boom. That it's going to be hard to be a triple header than that. That's so good. Next year on ABC, you're going to see weekends like that all the time, because you're going to go, you're going to see Mississippi State, LSU, Georgia, Florida. And then, I know that that's not possible because LSU is always off the week of Georgia, Florida, but you get my point. So, it's curious to see and hear from Paul that he's pretty definitive about this. I don't get a chance to watch his show every single day. I'm too busy creating content of my own, but it always is curious to see what he has to say about all that. Make sure you're checking out our newsletter. It's down below. Tens of thousands of people have signed up for it and get it every single day. I'm going to put a link to it down below. Don't miss out on that. I mean, you're just going to miss out on too many stories. We don't do all of our stories on here, and we don't do all of our videos on the site. So make sure you're doing both. But I think when you're looking at the Paul correcting Stephen A. I don't know if we're going to see these two teams in the playoff at the end of the day. I mean, if Georgia loses this weekend, they're probably not getting into the playoff. I don't know how they get in. I mean, to be honest with you, So, and and if Ohio State loses this one, I think they can still recover at Rutgers. They could still recover from that because of beating Penn State and Notre Dame. They'd have the capability to beat Michigan. I think I don't know. I say that Georgia missed the playoff. That might not be true actually, but they would have to win every other game that they play, um, and take it from there. But the way they're playing right now, it just doesn't seem like them them losing is probable. I'll tell you that right now. It is not probable that you'll see that this weekend. I do want to show you this one thing, this River's Edge collection from our buddies over at Ecopoly. I've shown this in the recent past. These are awesome Christmas gifts. The Adirondack rocker. You can get this in any color. Well, I'm saying any color. That's my statement. But you can get this not just in any color, but look at that. Like if that's something that you're like, yes, I've got to have that at the lake or at the river. That's a neat looking chair right there. I'm not gonna lie. But you can doll it up. You can make them both the same. I would not do this, but if you're a big Ole Miss fan, I mean, that'd be exactly what you want. But that's the sort of stuff that they can do for you over at EcoPoly. Make sure you're taking advantage of 15% off and the free shipping. Why? I mean, this is not just a commercial. Completely, this is going to be in your life for a while. This chair, 20-year warranty, completely created with. Recycled plastics that are shipped into the heart of Georgia. And it just is such a good product. The products are that good. That is a fascinating. I'm just still looking at this Ole Miss thing. That would be, if you were an Ole Miss fan, that would be killer. Or if you're like, would that be like Lee County maybe? Or somebody like that? Like if your high school team's that way. But you can really, you can make the colors whatever you want. If you want red and black, you can get red and black, and that's fine too. I'll show you right now. For me, this is a little aggressive, but maybe that's for you. I don't know. Maybe I would go secondary color there, and your primary is that looks better to me. But whatever. There's a lot of things to go with there, but I think Stephen A. watches some college football games. We typically at Dawg Post are watching about 12 games in a weekend. Even with the Georgia game playing, weekend of Florida is a little less actually. But we watched 3 games at a time at noon. We only watched the Georgia game. That's the 4. We watched then 3 games after that, which gets you to about 7, and then the 3 games after that at the 10:30 kick. And obviously there's Thursday night games and Friday night games, but we watch quite a few games. I think, there's been this notion built up about Georgia from the first couple games that most people didn't watch, to be honest with you. That, Georgia's not as good as they were last year. I'm not sure if that's true anymore, to be honest. And I may make another video about that sometime soon. I'm not sure that is a legitimate statement. Because here we are 8 games through the season, and if you sort of substitute the Missouri game last year with the Auburn game of this year, you don't have a giant win over Oregon because they've not played Oregon. So, what they did at Kentucky was very similar to what they did to Oregon. Kentucky was ranked a little lower than Oregon, but it's not dissimilar from that. They had to play better against South Carolina this year than they did a year ago. Or, well, they had to grind it out a little bit. But, I mean, I think what folks, are thinking is, oh, man, they're not as dominant on defense. I'm not sure about that part either. I mean, like, when you look statistically, they're allowing more points. But I'm not sure that statement is accurate. They are definitely better at throwing it this year, which took a little bit of time to get going. So when folks like Pat McAfee certainly watches a lot of college football. He's on game day and all that. But one reason why so many people watch us, besides our stunning intellectual ability, is we cover Georgia on a very 4-foot level. we're there for every single game, asking Kirby questions post game. I'm on the field for the games. Guys in national media, that's not what they do. Like Tony Kornheiser, Joel Klatt, um, you know, Michael Wilbon, Jim Rome. These people are not going to be at a Georgia game. And everyone spent the first month of this college football season being obsessed with Colorado and Dion, which is great. I mean, we watched it. I mean, I think a lot of people, 10 million people watching some of those games. So it spoke to a moment in college football. It was really good for the sport, to be honest with you. But as time went on, and the cream starts rising to the crop, you look at it and you say, well, is Ohio State better than Georgia? Is Michigan better than Georgia? The college football playoffs seems to think that it are not. I mean, I don't know. I'm not so sure. It seems to me that Georgia's toughest out is Michigan. I think that Florida State has some really legitimate players. But Ohio State has really grinded out wins. And they've been tested a lot. So it may be that the best team is not there at the end for Georgia to play if Georgia gets there. Georgia got to get through this stretch. This is rough, y'all. I mean, you think about Missouri at 14, Ole Miss who's at 11. I use AP rankings. I can't. We decided a long time ago we're not shifting every single week. Like everything's shifted now. It's showing Georgia number 2. Georgia's the number 1 team in the country. Okay. They're the AP number 1 team. That's what it is. That's been going back since 1936. So that's what we use. And they've got to deal with Missouri, Ole Miss, Tennessee on the road. Those are all ranked teams. I do not think Georgia Tech will be ranked if they're 7-4. But Georgia Tech's shown some life. I mean, what they did against North Carolina, helping North Carolina collapse. But then you've got what should be a 1-loss Alabama, or perhaps a 2-loss LSU team who will be waiting on you at the Dome if you get there. That's a challenging schedule that no one else will have. And the one thing, too, that a lot of folks were talking about last night, Tuesday night, whenever it was, on College Football Playoff releasing, was, Georgia goes undefeated, they're going to be the 1. And that's going to matter. But I'll talk more about that if that becomes imminent. I think we're a long way. I mean, we're clearly weeks away from that month. Well, a month and a few days from that moment. So I don't, well, we're even further away than that. So it's a month and 2 days from today. So we got a long way to go, long season. I think Paul's probably more correct than Stephen A. I think Georgia's probably the 1, but I don't think it's really anything to get upset about.